We will start in a few minutes. Please be patient. Thank you. Ми посадимо ще сюди людей. Посадіть людей. Let's start. Okay, let's start. Ola is directing him. Ola, ask him. Maybe. Yeah, okay. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, dear friends, welcome. My name is Uliana Chromyak, and I am the Executive Director of Ukraine House Davos. And it is my great honor to open today the 8th edition of Ukraine House Davos. For the 8th year in a row, it's a place where Ukraine is not spoken about, but spoken with. Before we start, let's watch a video prepared by our team.
In Ukraine, we know well what silence is. Silence is the minute of remembrance we observe every day to honor our fallen defenders. Silence is the morning after an attack, when we rise and move forward. We work, raise our children, and build the future of our country. Silence is our dignity. But silence does not define Ukraine today because our resistance is loud. Our recovery is relentless and resilient. We clear the ruins and swiftly build the future we believe in. We know how to save lives in silence and under the roar of explosions. We restore light to energy networks and to people's hearts. We prevail with strength and dignity because today we represent not only a country, but also those who gave their lives for it. We create solutions that transform cities and communities, lives, bodies, and human destinies. We rebuild and invest in the future. We open new business opportunities. We form partnerships that deliver shared results. Ukraine mobilizes global support, while at the same time investing its own effort, experience, and responsibility. We are grateful for the trust, and we earn it through our work every single day. Ukraine speaks to the world loudly as an equal partner, and we invite you to become our partner in resilience, growth, and building the future. A future our children will live in. Join us, invest in Ukraine, and build a safe future together with us.
Every time I see the pictures like this, I'm really proud and honored to be Ukrainian. And today it's my great pleasure to welcome the official delegation of Ukraine, and I would like to invite on stage Oleksiy Sobolev, the Minister of Economy, Environment and Agriculture of Ukraine, for the welcoming speech. Mike? Yeah, should work. Mike? Okay. This one. Okay?
Yes. Oh, great. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends and partners. Welcome to Ukraine House. It's a great honor to be here at the stage and like during the ceremony of opening it during Davos days. This is a very important moment for Ukraine today. People are asking, like, what's the aim? Why is Ukrainian delegations here? Our aim is very simple: to bring peace closer. I think this is the what millions, tens of millions of Ukrainians want, and hundreds of millions of people around the world want. And we do feel this support of you, and we hope to actually do this. So we're using this opportunity as every opportunity to actually end this war and bring peace in Ukraine closer. To do that, we need several things. First of all, like very strong security guarantees. The negotiations on that are ongoing. They were carried out during the weekend in US. They are continuing today as we speak, and to bring the peace closer. Another big bit is, of course, EU integration and all the reforms that need to be done by Ukraine in order to achieve the status. And we are committed to doing the reforms, and also very, like, it's the will of Ukrainian people who want to get in EU very, very fast. And the next bit, of course, is the economy, and this is also what this forum is about. In order to be successful and to get, like, really successful security in Ukraine, we need much stronger economy than we have today. Although economy is really resilient, by Ministry of Economy's estimates, GDP in 2025 grew by 2.2%. And if you look at Russia, it probably the growth was closer to 1 or even lower, and it will have a recession next year. So this shows the resilience of the economy, but definitely we need to grow much faster. So how to do that? And this is our ongoing negotiations with all of our partners to how to achieve prosperity, how we all do what Ukraine will do: reforms, provide projects, provide business environment, and then the partner will help us and provide different instruments and funding to achieve that. I'd like to point out that our growth is not inertia, and we are moving from raw material based economy to innovation-driven one. So everybody knows here about Ukraine defense sector, which is like bringing art of the moment innovations to the battlefield. But also we see that in the statistics that we're growing industry, and to achieve 20% of Ukraine's economy from the 8% that we have today. We also transforming our energy system from a vulnerable centralized Soviet model to decentralized resilient architecture based on renewables and smart grid solutions. But also this is the like last task that I would highlight for this year's Davos visit is of the dire situation with energy in Ukraine. So it is another call to all our friends to help us get through this winter, which will also, this help will bring peace closer. Russia will understand that kind of nothing, even one of the hardest winters ever in decades, could break the spirit of Ukrainians, and we will not stop fighting for our freedom. I'd like to stress that Ukraine, it's not just talking. We're doing the work, and we're ready for large-scale capital. You'll see here today and tomorrow a lot of announcement about investment funds that are ready to invest in Ukraine. They were raised during the war, and they're going to invest during the war so we can have a better peacetime. So imagine if people were raising this money, and you will hear about that a lot, during the wartime, what could be done once the peace comes. So this is all real. And we also have this great US-Ukraine investment fund that also started working just a couple of weeks ago, and also Europe Flagship Fund. Some of the products for that will also be announced during this conference. And my message to the global business community is simple. Do not wait for the formal days marking the end of the war. And I think you'll see here a lot of examples about it. So those who invest in Ukraine today will become leaders of Europe's most dramatic and technologically advanced economy tomorrow. We truly believe in it. And there was a previous panel with all the heads of international financial organizations saying that Ukraine should believe in it, and everybody should believe in Ukraine, and I think we'll deliver. Thank you very much. Welcome to Ukraine House.
Wow, thank you. Thank you, Alexei. Thank you, Alexei. It's a pleasure having you and the official delegation working jointly with us here in Davos for the next 4 days. And it's definitely not about the compassion, as you have just heard from Alexei. You know, we came here to share our experience and opportunities that, you know, we gained through these 4 years of the full-scale invasion. 1,425 days. Yes. This is an incredible figure here that you are just watching. It's the longest fight after the Second World War. And this is the fight of Ukraine hope, the fight of resilience, and also, you know, the hope for the just and sustainable peace that Ukraine and all Ukrainian citizens would like to achieve. Ukraine sounds different, Ukraine feels different, and Ukraine looks different. Why does Ukraine matter to the world? And why does the world need Ukraine? Not because of the war, not because of the compassion, and not because of the politics. First of all, Ukraine is here to share our security and technological innovations. Innovations that were born and tested in the most severe reality that you can ever imagine. Because of what we built under pressure, because of the technologies that survive blackouts, uncertainty, and constant disruption. A few facts here from us to share. In 2025, Ukraine defense sector and industry reached 35 billion production capacity. Ukraine now produces 10 million drones per year, accounting for 80% of battlefield strikes. Ukraine is also the first country in the world to officially establish unmanned systems forces, with the most systems produced domestically. But this ability to build goes far beyond the defense sector. These are not the experiments, and these are the solutions that were implemented in reality under the heaviest conditions and are already tested, you know, by Ukraine before the world is just preparing for that. Secondly, Ukraine is here to develop and raise new business culture. We can offer the world a new business mindset, a different approach to investment, to building companies, to scaling and operating in uncertainty. Flexible, decentralized, designed not for comfort, but for the resilience. Telecoms infrastructure keeps more than 50 million connections active. This is an amazing figure. Ukraine's agricultural sector feeds about 600 million people worldwide. In 2025, defining all adverse scenarios, the Ukrainian banking system fueled a record growth of 30% in net lending in corporate and retail segment, proving that the country is investing in its own future. Ukraine is also a strategic supplier to the global economy. We have 117 out of 120 widely used critical materials. 50% of the world's neon, including 90% of semiconductor-grade neon used by the US chip industry. And the combination of what we have under the ground and what we have on the ground, together with our business culture mindset, makes us unique and essential. And the third, Ukraine is here to inspire. To inspire through our people, through more than 1 million soldiers who fight every single day for our freedom and for our future. They inspire everyone who works, who builds, who saves lives, who keeps Ukraine moving forward. Teachers running underground classrooms, firefighters, rescue teams, doctors that are entering the buildings that are collapsing. And we are here very grateful to the Ukrainian armed forces for making Ukraine's voice here and on other global platforms. Unfortunately, we have suffered great losses. Thousands of Ukrainians have been killed in this war. I invite you to join me in a moment of silence to honor their memory. Thank you. We remember those who were killed, and we work for those who will rebuild Ukraine. And finally, when the world asks us, what do we do when everything breaks? And we know the answer, and we are ready to share it. I now invite you to switch on the light, together with Ukraine. Each of us carries this light through ideas, investments, and decisions. Thank you. Over the coming days, Ukraine House Davos will be a place where conversations turn into action, a place where partnerships are formed, where agreements are signed, and Ukraine's future takes shape. We are honored to serve this platform, a trusted space where governments, investors, businesses, and institutions work together on the long-term solutions for Ukraine. We are deeply grateful for the international partners and international communities who stand with Ukraine, who support Ukraine, to all the citizens of all countries who make a real difference. Your support is invaluable. Before we continue, I would like to thank our organizers and invite them to join us on stage. The organizing companies, as well as the organizing committee members. So please, welcome to the stage Svetlana Gritsenko, member of the board, Viktor Pinchuk Foundation. Lana Kojarny, founding partner and CEO of the Horizon Capital. Dennis Johnson, chairman of the board, UMF. And Viktor Pinchuk from the Viktor Pinchuk Foundation. Viktor, yeah, join us. Thank you. We also extend our gratitude to our partners, our gold partners, Temerty Foundation, Interpipe, Kyivstar, Visa Privatbank, our panel partner, Kernel, and our networking partners, American Chamber of Commerce and Modern Expo. We will have great networking reception, so please welcome all of you throughout the week. I also would like to extend my gratitude to the whole team and the volunteers of Ukraine House who will share this hospitality with you in the next couple of days. Thank you very much. As we gather in solidarity, please rise to honor Ukraine with this national anthem, performed live. This is very important, and I would like to welcome the Cultural Forces Ensemble joining us live from the very heart of Kyiv, from the Independence Square, in the minus 15 degrees Celsius during the total blackout.
Ні слава, ні воля, ще нам, браття Україні, усміхнеться доля, згинуть наші воріженьки, як роса на сонці. Запануєм і ми, браття, у своїй сторонці, душу й тіло ми положим за нашу свободу і покажем, що ми, браття, козацького роду, душу й тіло ми положим за нашу свободу і покажем, що ми, браття, козацького роду. Слава Україні!
Героям слава!
Слава нації!
Glory to Ukraine.
Да, буду. Так. So the opening ceremony officially closed, and now we are starting our working week, business week. So I would like to start our first panel for today, and happy to introduce a shared vision for just and sustainable peace in Europe. I would like to welcome the moderator of the panel, Zeni Mintembedo, Executive Editor-in-Chief, The Economist, on the stage. Welcome. Welcome, Zeni.
Hi, thank you. Gosh, hi everybody. This is a little chaotic. Well, welcome. Can you hear me? Yes, I think you can now. We are actually going to start with a video, which is a video showing the future of Ukraine.
Does anyone truly know what the future looks like? In Ukraine, we call it after victory, when a just and lasting peace comes. Our future has no fixed date, but it has voices, stories, faces. It is created by people, by veterans, those who learn to walk, to work, to live again, while building businesses and communities that help others return to life. By doctors and rehabilitation specialists, those who restore movement, strength, dignity. Entrepreneurs, engineers, and researchers are shaping our future. They build energy-efficient homes, create safe schools, and provide new housing for those forced to flee their homes. There is much light in our future because we restore it every day, in homes, in hospitals, in cities, and in people's hearts. The future is born in Ukraine's opportunities, in recovery and new industries, in defense technologies, in innovative prosthetics, and in businesses that continue to work and grow. Ukrainian society rebuilds strength inside the country, while the president of Ukraine and our diplomats speak to the world through the language of justice, defending our nation's right to a just and lasting peace. The war has shown us what the future peace must be just and lasting, and such a future will come after victory. But we are building it already, together, here in Ukraine.
Thank you. I think you'll agree with me that it is important to start any conversation right now with an optimistic but realizable picture of the future like that. We're now going to have a panel to essentially discuss how we get there from where we are now. I'm going to sit here, and I'm going to invite onto the stage Dr. Benedikt Franke, who is CEO of the Munich Security Conference, Alexandra Matvichuk, who obviously needs no introduction to any of you, human rights lawyer, head of the Center for Civil Liberties, and of course 2022 Nobel Prize winner, and Ambassador Kurt Volker, the former US Special Representative for Ukraine and US Ambassador to NATO. And we will be joined, as soon as he's got off the phone with the President, Alexei Sobolev, Minister for Economy, Environment and Agriculture. And I hope the empty chair here will be filled, will be reserved for him, exactly. So yeah, just in case you were thinking of coming to join us up here. You know, I watched that video earlier today, and I thought it did fill me with hope, but it also put into stark relief the rather more brutal reality of where we are today. And I think we should be honest about where we are today, and it's frankly pretty grim. It's pretty grim in Kiev and in cities in Ukraine, under the onslaught of a concerted Russian attack on infrastructure of a sort that we have not seen. It's pretty grim on the front lines, where there is a very slow but gradual continued pressure and some progress from the Russians. It's pretty grim in Europe right now. And the endless discussions about ceasefire and the endless negotiations are taking place against the backdrop of what I think, and I'm not exaggerating, is the biggest crisis in transatlantic relations since the founding of NATO. You might think, what does Greenland have to do with Ukraine? Well, I think it has quite a lot to do with Ukraine. We are at a moment of, and I say this with you know, we've had so many moments in the last few years where I've thought this cannot get any more crazy. But I think we are in total crazy land right now. And I have no clue what the US administration is going to do tomorrow morning, but it is seriously, seriously dangerous. And I think this has knock-on consequences of a major sort for what's happening in Ukraine. And I also think that what is at stake in Ukraine matters, and how Europe reacts now matters enormously. So what I wanted with this very august panel was to tease out that. Hopefully, you will dispel my gloomier conclusions, because Ambassador Volker particularly is an inveterate optimist and always tells me when I'm too pessimistic. And I wanted to start perhaps with you, Alexandra, and you could give us a sense, and I know there are many of you from Ukraine here, but for those who aren't, give us a sense right now of how resilient you think Ukrainians are? What is the impact of this onslaught? I mean, we have, at The Economist, we have a WhatsApp group with all my colleagues in Ukraine, and I read it every day, and I'm just amazed that people are still continuing in the way they're continuing. And so I would love to hear from you about that, and also what this does to the political context, because let's not sugarcoat it, we have had in the past few months an extraordinary corruption scandal unveil itself. So tell us what it's like there before we get to the bigger international picture.
I would like to share several points. First,
I'm a human rights lawyer and I'm working with people affected by this war directly. So let me assure you that people in Ukraine dream about peace. But Putin is trying to portray Ukrainian resistance to Russian occupation as action to undermine peace. But people in Ukraine just simply don't want to be occupied. We need a real security guarantees, not second Budapest memorandum to stop Putin's war of aggression against Ukraine. I'm very worried that we completely lost human dimension in this all peace talks. So I must to reiterate obvious. Occupation is not peace. Occupation is the same war, just in another form. Occupation is not just about changing one state flag to another. Occupation means enforced disappearances, torture, rape, denial of your identity, forcible adoption of your own children, filtration camps, and mass graves. So people in Ukraine dream about peace, but people in Ukraine don't want Russian occupation. Second, President Trump has frequently argued that this Russian war of aggression against Ukraine, it's not his war. He claimed that had he been in the Oval Office in February 2022 instead of President Biden, this war would never have happened. But after the whole year of American peace talks with Russians, the reality is undeniable. This is the Trump's war. This is a Trump's war not because he promised to end this war in 24 hours. It's so because the Russian president, Vladimir Putin, responded to every of his peacemaking efforts with intensified attacks on Ukraine. And if President Trump will fail to stop the Russian war of aggression against Ukraine, or if he facilitates peace deal that will open a path to the future Russian invasion, he will enter it in the history as a weak president. And what is even worse, as a weaker leader than Putin. And President Trump can't afford himself to be and to have such legacy. Third, over last year, we faced with two contradictory realities. When we heard about a series of international meetings in Miami, in Geneva, in Washington, in Istanbul, it seemed that we are on a way to peace, but reality on the ground tells completely another stories. According to UN estimates, Trump's year of negotiation has become the deadliest period for civilians in Ukraine since 2022. The numbers of those killed and wounded has surged 31% higher than in 2014. Russian rockets deliberately destroyed the energy infrastructure in my country. I have just come from Kiev. It's minus 70 degrees Celsius there. People are literally freezing without heat, water, electricity, light, and sometimes internet connections. So if we want to stop Russian war of aggression against Ukraine, the price of waging this war has to be for Putin much higher than the price for peace. And how to reach this point, this is the main question. There is no magic button. Consolidated efforts of United States and the EU is needed to do it, because Putin started the large-scale war, not because he wanted to occupy just another part of Ukrainian land. Putin started this war because he wanted to occupy and destroy the whole country. His logic is historical. He sees Ukraine as a bridge to Europe. He dreams about his legacy. So Putin will stop only when he will be stopped. This is the truth. And now a return to your points. Sorry for being long. It's not easy to live like this. I'm still lacking the proper words to describe what does it mean to live during the large-scale war. This is a war on Ukrainian territories. This is a war which knocked almost to every doors. We all lost someone. It's not easy to live in total uncertainty when you can't predict not just your day, but your next several hours, because you have no idea what will happen. But these dramatic times provide us an opportunity to express the best in us, to be courageous, to fight for freedom, to make difficult but right choices, and to help each other. And how we are surviving with the broken infrastructure without heating, light, water, and electricity. Because people in Kiev, people in Odessa, people in Kharkiv, in other countries, they're helping each other. And you know what? I think that this darkness in Kiev provides much more light than something which we see in other countries and capitals.
Thank you for those eloquent words. Before turning to our European and American friends, I want to ask you one more question, Alexandra, which is, you say very powerfully that despite the darkness, it provides you with light. But could you give a sense of what the public mood is with respect to some of the key elements of these peace negotiations, which I put in quotation marks? So, for example, the willingness to cede territory in the Donbass in return for security guarantees. Is there a desire, which I read about, a growing proportion of Ukrainians just want the war to end? Can you speak to that before we go to the international context?
Probably some politicians abroad think that if Ukraine gave up the part of Ukrainian territories just to feed the Russia's imperialist appetite, this war will stop. But for majority of people in Ukraine, it's obvious that Putin will not stop this war. He don't need Donbass. He needs the whole country, and even more. Let me be brutally honest. People in European Union, they are safe only because Ukrainians are still fighting and don't let Russian army to move further. So probably politicians abroad can afford such kind of thinking, but Ukrainians can't. We are dying. So let me elaborate this with one historical question, because nobody wants the war. The war is horrible. We want to stop it. When Soviet Union invaded to Afghanistan, Soviet families began to receive coffins, and it led to growing public discontent and ultimately to Moscow withdraw from the country. And now Russian families are also receive coffins, but with money, with a lot of money. And why it's a big difference? Because Russia pretends to be great, but Russia is very poor. A lot of people live in depressive regions. For a lot of people, the only way how to build career is to join the Russian army, because they start to receive money which they can't even dream in this depressive region. Our Russian human rights colleagues call this type of economy necronomy. This means that we must consolidate efforts and to reduce the ability of Russian economy to finance this war. Because while the money flows will continue, Putin will continue this war. He will use this peace talk as a special operation, as a tool, how to gain a time and how to decrease the level of support of Ukraine and make for him much easier to achieve his goals.
Thank you. Ambassador Volker, let's turn to you. And can you give me a sense, and I haven't had a conversation with you about this, about what you make of the spinning plates of this peace negotiations where Miami, all kinds of Istanbul. I mean, I am struck there are supposedly conversations about reconstruction, there are supposedly conversations about mineral deals, there are supposedly conversations about security guarantees, whatever that's worth. Do you think this is all just an irrelevance, or do you think it is actually going to lead to something?
No, I think it is relevant from the perspective of keeping the United States, Ukraine, and Europe on the same page. It is not going to lead to a peace agreement. Peace agreement would depend on Russia agreeing to peace, which, as Alexander very eloquently said, they're never going to do. Even if they agree to give up territory, even if there's a ban on the coalition of the willing force deploying to Ukraine, Russia is going to demand more. There'll always be more. They might say now that, okay, all of these 20 points are okay, but these don't cover all of the points, and so we need to do it. So there is no peace agreement at the end of this. However, having...
Oh, look, our empty chair is being filled. Minister, welcome. Thank you. I'm glad your phone call didn't go on too long.
Yes, thank you.
We're just hearing about the prospects for this endless negotiations, and Ambassador Volker is telling us whether he said that he doesn't think it will lead to a peace agreement. Keep going, and then I'll bring the minister in.
Sure. So that won't lead to a peace agreement with Russia. In fact, I think, just skipping ahead, the outcome that we should be aiming for, and I think is achievable, is Russia is not able to keep up the war, to your point, too costly for them. And so we end up with a de facto ceasefire. And then we all lean in to reinforce Ukraine and reinforce deterrence so Russia doesn't attack again. That's where I think we end up. But the peace talks that we're having are keeping the US, Ukraine, and Europe aligned on all of the other things, including Ukraine fast membership to the European Union, including Ukraine's progress towards another free election when they're able to do so, including security guarantees, including a coalition of the willing presence to help deter a future Russian attack, including economic development and reconstruction in the region. There's a lot of paper being shuffled between Ukraine, the US, and Europe right now about a Ukraine Recovery Investment Fund or framework. So getting all of this together is actually quite good. And as you might expect, there's a lot of worry both in Ukraine and Europe that the US will just pick up and walk away. This is getting the US more and more deeply engaged, which is actually positive.
So I wish I could feel comforted by that, but I note that this is happening against the backdrop of what I genuinely do think is the biggest transatlantic crisis since the beginning of the transatlantic alliance. So you say that these talks keep the US-Europe aligned, but meanwhile, you know...
On Ukraine, about the...
But it's against the backdrop of an absolute fissure on Greenland. So I was going to get to Greenland later, but I can't resist it now. I mean, surely this is a backdrop against which, one, US security guarantees mean absolutely nothing, and two, the US is willing to blow up NATO. So I can't see how you can think that these negotiations are keeping them together.
Yeah, well, Greenland is a whole topic in its own right.
Yeah, but it's related, surely.
Yeah, of course it's related. And what I think we have to say there is we don't know yet how this plays out. We know what President Trump says he wants. He wants to own Greenland. Okay, that's unacceptable to Europe. It's unacceptable to Denmark, to NATO. It would mean the end of NATO if it were done by force. So that is what he wants, because he wants Greenland. But those consequences are extraordinary for the United States. It's far worse for the United States to go down that road than to work out something else. And what President Trump has never appreciated publicly, he's never said this is true, is the U.S. can do anything militarily on Greenland that we want in order to assure the security of Greenland and North America. And in fact, we used to have a much larger presence in Greenland for that purpose, and it was the United States' decisions to withdraw those forces and bases under previous administrations, and there's nothing that prevents us from doing it again. So everything is on the table in terms of addressing security, in terms of addressing minerals, and we can do this without rupturing the transatlantic alliance. So we are in the midst of the argument right now. But I have to think that whether it's the Congress and the Senate, or whether it is the public, which is very much against Trump's moves on Greenland, or whether it is just the high-level working group between Denmark and the US that they've agreed to set up, they figure this out, and we put this back where it belongs.
So your advice is to keep calm.
My advice, we talked about this over a year ago, Zanny. My advice is always, when dealing with the Trump administration, don't wait, worry, and complain. Do your own homework, figure out what the problem is, figure out what the solution is, and be proactive.
Yeah.
And that is what Denmark is now doing.
Minister, I'm going to turn this to you, and we'll come to Ukraine's economy a little later in the conversation. But on the negotiations that are undergoing, first of all, if you could give your assessment of where they are and what you think they are likely to achieve. And then secondly, do you think what is happening over Greenland is relevant to Ukraine, and in what way?
Thank you very much. So, like, my absence was part of this whole process. So it's happening as we speak, and our team members kind of continue negotiations. As Kurt said, like, very accurately, this is between US, EU, and Ukraine, and we need to bring like more partners during the next several days to these negotiations, because like security guarantees, economic prosperity, EU accession, all linked. Like, if without any of the components, like the deal will not work. So from my perspective, where I was engaged in, this is the farthest we got in any kind of negotiations with to end the war. So basically, there are parts of the document from this framework that are like 100% complete. Everybody is aligned. There are several issues outstanding. There is work going on with Russians, and so that's there. The economic component is a bit tricky, because it should be accepted both to US and EU, that they kind of share this framework with Ukraine and gonna support us to create a prosperous economy that can sustain its own security. So that's kind of the factor why we need it to be self-sustainable. And this is very tricky, especially during this during this week, just because, for example, the security guarantees, we have bilateral with US and another arm with EU countries. And but the economic bit should be supported by all three parties.
Do you attach, how much credibility do you attach to a US security guarantee right now?
So, like, without credible security guarantees, there will be no economic prosperity.
What makes it credible? This is a country, this is an administration that is about to blow up NATO over the president's demand to own a territory. How can you believe these people when they say things?
Look, so like, people don't say things. There are like security component that is drafted in the documents that should be ratified by the parliament. So this is one of the condition, and it's also probably like not in a way from the economic standpoint. It's not just up to us to decide whether they sound or not. It's the investors, and kind of like, if the big business says, hey guys, like, this is phony, and this is big business of US that has to make this decision, and we will not invest in Ukraine, so no prosperity. So it all falls apart. So basically, the drafting and the adoption in the Senate, like, should be credible enough for businesses to invest. So this is a very like concrete benchmark how we think about that. And we had like many discussions, and the businesses shared exactly the same view, and they all want to help, want to invest, but they do need these credible guarantees. So I think they are, from what I heard from our teams, they are kind of worded very precisely, and that's the.
And can I just clarify? Those would be security guarantees broadly for the country, or they would be specific security guarantees for the investors in whatever they agree to do?
No. This is security guarantees for the country. Because like if you talk to investors, they say like number one, this war will never repeat. Russia will never attack. So we need something like that. And this is like no financial engineering could create this. It's just like military security guarantees.
Can I just ask a question of the room? And I know this is live streamed, so they will not see it. But raise your hand if you believe a U.S. security guarantee now is credible. Not a single hand has gone up. Now, that may be because you're shy, but I suspect it's because many of you don't think that there's much credibility to it.
Yeah.
Ambassador, does that surprise you?
Well, I'll just say that the language that he's referring to is saying that, and it's unnecessarily balanced, but nonetheless it says that if Russia attacks Ukraine and Ukraine hadn't attacked first, then there would be a military response to help defend Ukraine. And part of the implementation of this is for also not only American but European security guarantees and the presence of a coalition of the willing force in Ukraine and American commitments of enablers and backstop for that European coalition of the willing force. So there's a lot of detail in there. That's what he's referring to. Now, I take your point that President Trump decides every day what he thinks he's going to do. It's not as if he feels committed to what he said the day before. So there is that doubt. But I think, getting to where I was before and what Alexander was saying, the real guarantee is hurting Russia's economy, its state finances, the price of oil and gas, and its ability to recruit into the armed forces, so that it needs a ceasefire and it needs a break. And we have to push for that. We can make that happen sooner if we lean in, which we're not doing. We can stretch it out and make it more painful, which is what we are doing. But we can get to a point of a ceasefire, and then we can get to a point of deterring the next attack.
Benedict, I'm going to turn to you. Sorry it's taken me so long, but
That's okay. I felt quite comfortable out there.
I suspect we can all agree that whatever the US does or does not choose to do, Europe is going to be playing the central role in securing Ukraine, both in terms of economic support and in terms of military support. Can you give me a sense, firstly, in the short term, how in Germany in particular, people are thinking about the importance of this moment for Ukraine and how the whole Greenland fracas affects it? And then secondly, well, actually answer that first, because I don't want to come into the longer term about how credible European guarantees are.
Very obviously. Can I just say this almost looks like a room at the Munich Security Conference, so kudos to the Ukraine House for packing so many of you into such a great room. Listen,
Shameless bit of self-promotion.
Yeah, I know, I thought I'd do that. Last advertising slot of the day. Easy, I mean, you said crazy world in your intro, and I think it really is on the rhetorical side of things. What has been said in the last 2 or 3 days has done enormous damage to the transatlantic relationship. And I love you, Kurt, you know that, and America in general, but within official German circles and European circles, that really changes things. And it is not about Greenland, it's about the way this is done. It could have been another territory, it could have been another issue. It's this brazen attack on our values, it's the clear double standards, and it is this total uncertainty of what is coming next. And so now the question is whether that is, in a bizarre way, actually good for Ukraine, because it really freaks Europeans into cohesion. It really makes it clear that it is on us to support Ukraine, and that hoping for the US to change its mind again and again is just not the right thing to do. I just hope that our leaders get that message. And let me, because you've asked, how is it in the German public debate? I think we have a list of 4 things that we want to see, 4 hopes that most Germans will probably sign. One is a hope that President Trump will realize that President Putin is the bad guy. A hope that EU leaders realize that they will have to be in the lead and not President Trump. A hope that European populations realize that there is no cheap and easy way out. Because at least in Germany, there are still many, particularly in the east of the country, that believe we should just end this war, under all circumstances. Just get it over with, and it will be good for Germany and Europe. And it won't. It really won't. And then a hope that our strategy is going to become much clearer, ensuring that as Europe we've not been able to provide our own peace deal or proposal, that at least we do everything we can to make sure that Ukraine ends up in the best possible negotiation position when it comes to the implementation of the US deal. I mean, it pains me as a European that it takes crazy US proposals all the time to get us going. And I just wish next time it's us coming up with a plan.
So since you framed all of your 4 hopes as hopes, what odds do you put on them being reality?
So
I would say no to all 4, to be honest.
I'm totally hopeless on number 1, so I don't think that Trump gets it about Putin. I don't think he does, and I don't think he will. I'm a little more hopeful on number 2, so I do believe that European leaders, not all of them, but many, have finally gotten around to seeing themselves as leaders of the pack and not followers. Look at Germany. I mean, look at our defense spending, look at the things that we're doing, look at the changes of laws, our constitution, and all these things that I personally would have thought are totally impossible 2 or 3 years ago. And why are we doing this? It is because of Ukraine. It is because of the Russian threat. So there is discernible change. And it's so easy to talk us down. It's so easy to talk down the European Union. It's so easy to, prey on our fragmentation and on our chaos and so on. But at the end of the day, Ukraine is our best hope for freedom in Europe, and the EU is Ukraine's best hope, I think.
So, Minister, you negotiate with the Europeans, you negotiate with the Americans. Do you think that Benedict's right, that the European leaders have got the resolve to do this? And to what degree do you think that in future, both the credibility of security guarantees and your countries will be dependent on Europeans rather than Americans?
Well, frankly, maybe that's the change that we've noticed across the last months. So something definitely changed with Europe leading more in. Thinking about that right now, it seems to be I was feeling something different. So that might be it. For maybe these reasons as well. So, yeah.
And let me then just, because this will get to your portfolio, the economic, and we'll set aside the military, but the budget support, and essentially if the Europeans have to buy weaponry on behalf of Ukraine, is a considerable financial requirement. I mean, we put on the cover a few weeks ago, we said it was $400 billion over the next 4 years, but give or take, it's a substantial amount.
Yeah.
How confident are you that the Europeans will step up?
Look, we just had this discussion here at Ukraine House Davos just a couple of hours ago with Kristalina Georgieva, Ajay Banga, and Odile Renaud from EBRD. And so Kristalina was saying that when the war started in April at the meeting in Washington, she was saying, well, to sustain the economy, Ukraine will need circa $5 billion a month, and everybody just laughed it out. This is no way it is possible, right? So you can see it actually happened. So it is the need is big, and it's obvious and it's objective. It's no way kind of like, I don't know, doing some magic stuff, it goes away. No, this is the security, it costs like that. Is it feasible to do? I think with this discussion, and this is what we feel Europe is kind of feeling, that they should be more in the lead just because this is their responsibility as well, and we protect Europe as well as Ukraine. And that's how they're very detailed in all our negotiations, because they know at the end it will be, I don't know, like 70% up to them to help us get through and work together. So yeah, this is what we feel and know. It's impossible until it's done, and I think it's possible. On the macro framework, can Europe allow itself to have this kind of support? I think yes. Did it? So if you look at Poland, right, during the last 30 years, this is one of the kind of best economic miracles globally, and one of the engines for that was, of course, EU support collectively. So this is not in the range of impossible macroeconomically for the bloc.
I completely. Macroeconomically, it's eminently doable. The question is whether it's politically feasible. And I want to ask Benedikt one question, and then I'm going to open to the audience. This is
go to the audience.
No, I've got one more for you first, because this demand for, or this need for serious, macroeconomically feasible, but nonetheless a significant amount of money over a number of years, is taking place against the backdrop within Europe of populist right parties coming close to power. You know, France, I think, very close to electing a president from the populist right. Germany, not close to power, but nonetheless, you know, not insignificant. Even in the UK, you know, the party ahead in the polls is Reform UK. Against that political backdrop, do you see sustainable support for the scale of increased, not just diplomatic support, but monetary support for Ukraine that will be needed?
Yeah, and in fact, you know, when I was saying that I wouldn't do another advertising slot for the Munich Security Conference, I was lying, because this will be our key theme this year.
But you must have a view now. You can't.
Yeah, no. The point being is, if we continue to fail in explaining to our populations why we need to do this, and why this isn't charity, why this is a sensible investment in our own defense, in our own liberty, in our own freedom, then I think the far right and the far left, by the way, fringes, will lose a powerful argument. But it is on us, it's on the center to explain to our populations why this is important. And to be honest, we've been shit at it.
Okay, you've surprised even me. Yes, you're right. You're right. I was,
am I surprising you that I'm right?
I couldn't have put it better myself. That is true. Let us open to questions. Yes, there. Lady with the white T-shirt. White T-shirt, that's you. I don't know if you need to wait for a microphone, but just shout.
I don't. Thank you. I have a loud voice. I'm Ksenia Smirnova. I'm a journalist from Ukraine. So when we're talking, Mr. Walker, maybe it's a question for you as always. When we talk about security guarantees, I always remember this couple of days before the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. I was driving my car in Kiev along the huge, very beautiful street with the new construction buildings, with the trade centers, very luxury. More even now, we across the Europe, a lot of us Ukrainians see that sometimes in some places Ukrainians are more luxury in Kiev in some places than some places in Europe, but it's true. So I thought it will never happen. A couple of days before war, the security guarantees, because the money, business. Okay, so will it help European Union, for example, if Putin decides to invade not with tanks and rockets, but what he's doing right now, with fakes, with disinformation, with terrorism, with energetical terrorism, what he's doing. And my question as a fool is still, is it possible to be diplomatic and to be very accurate in communicating with Putin, and at the same time be fearless and brave? And so, do you see that it can be?
Okay. Thank you. That's a very good question. Is there any way that you can, and I guess I would add to it, negotiate with Putin, have an engagement with him, and still be brave and standing up to him? I mean, it's a good question because I think you started, Master Volker, by saying there's no, he's not going to agree. And I think you all, actually, Minister, do you think Putin, is there any peace deal that Putin would agree to?
Yes, eventually, of course.
Eventually?
Yeah.
When pressure has been put upon the Russians?
Yeah, but if you look at the kind of macro side of it, right? So we're growing last year like 2 and 2%. Russia probably like less than 1 this year, 0. So like the trends are diverging. So basically, there's this calculation whether it is like does he gain anything for the human lives that he's. So at the end, this calculation will kind of make the odds into the peace favor.
But and thank you for that question. I'm going to add one to it, which is, to what degree, we started by talking about the current attacks on Ukrainian infrastructure. I mean, if he carries on like this, he's going to essentially destroy the electricity grid of the 3 major cities and possibly more. I mean, at what point does that become so economically harmful that it actually precludes, has a serious further economic hit on Ukraine? I mean, at some point, presumably, just the entire distribution system collapses.
So, like, look, would you believe that economy could grow like 2.2% a year? Like, was what you read in the news? Like, I was also a bit more skeptical towards that. So basically, there's the resilience. Right now, it looks more dire because of we have the harshest winter in decades, unfortunately. So it takes a longer time to put this networks back online. So there's part there's part perception. There's of course part damage, right? But I wouldn't say that it's entirely critical. And that's one. The other, like the winter will be over, and it will be very different in spring, even with the damages sustained, just because the consumption is different. Then you have the renewables kicking in, etc. So that's why, like right now, it is the darkest time like ever, and for obvious practical reasons. But like with the course of time, it will get better. Not just because like I'm hopeful, but like you like the different factors.
Thank you. Yes, go ahead. One question from here.
Okay, just a very quick question. Lenin Kazarny, founding partner, CEO of Horizon Capital. Very quick. Alexandra, if you were to speak one-on-one with Trump, what would you say? For Benedict, for Kurt, for Alexei, finance and transactions matter. I think they matter in Germany. They matter to the US. They matter, Alexei, I know the extent to which the day-to-day work on this US-Ukraine Reconstruction Fund, there's never been that kind of partnership over 30 years. Yep. So talk to me about how much this finance, investment, economic partnerships and ties matter in this whole peace process. And then I want Alexandra to end with, what would you say to Trump one-on-one if you had the opportunity to sit down with him?
Okay, let's have the finance guys first, and then we'll have Alexandra. Benedict, starting with you.
I'm a finance guy now. So the whole economic aspect seems to be closely linked to the US approach to the peace deal. It's really not linked to the European a segment of the peace deal or interpretation. I think our point is that our economic growth at home, our social cohesion are at risk if we don't have a peace deal. We don't necessarily yet see the economic chances down the road if there is peace in Ukraine. And maybe, just maybe, that could be part of the narrative that I've mentioned, that we need to pull our populations along. However, I also find that somewhat difficult morally. We are not doing this because we want the rare earths in Ukraine. We are not doing that because we want resources. We want to do this because it's right, because a people is fighting for their liberty. And so the second you get things like that in, you may have a lever, but you also have a moral problem. And the Americans seem to have a more creative approach to that.
It's an appeal to values. It seems very quaint in the world today. Kurt.
Yeah, let me address a couple of things that came up here. First, on the finance point that Lena mentioned. On on the one side of it is getting a financial stake, a financial interest in Ukraine's success. This is where President Trump and his two non-government negotiators, Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff, have put all of the thinking, is how do we develop economic and financial interest? I think that is progressing, slowly but progressing, and I think it's real. So I do think that means something. Another aspect of the finances is what you were asking about, Zani, which is, okay, all these attacks on the power grid, that's going to hurt the economy. I think in the short term, yes, I think that's right. But I would just point out that every time Ukraine rebuilds the energy infrastructure, it is rebuilt to be more distributed and more resilient than it was before. And so I think this is a declining currency for Russia. This may be the darkest time. It may be the darkest time when we look at this again next year, too. So I think it is getting a bit better that way. Finally, on the finances, you were asking Benedict if Europe is prepared. Basically, Ukraine needs about 50 billion euros a year in terms of finance. That's what the EU has already been doing for the past few years, and it is well within the EU's capacity. It's not in the budget, but it's in the capacity of the EU to figure this out, and they have been doing that. So I'm not too concerned about the ability of Europe to continue to deliver as it has already done.
And Minister?
Yeah, I would say that I think maybe not entirely agree with the point that Europe is only on values looking at it. As I said, the approach is changing. So, and we're also asking it. So, Ukraine is not charity; it's security, and it's also economic development. We should be engineering for growth and innovation for Europe and solve some of the problems outlined in the Draghi report, which it all adds up. We need little help, but we need a lot of partnerships, and this is what we're doing also in defense, partnering with EU companies and saying, okay, you switch from the assistance to the investment bit, and we're also ready to privatize, and would very much glad to have our bigger state-owned companies privatized whole or partially to European companies to be economically intertwined. So, and in US, yes, this is very crucial. I think this deal. So first of all, it's insanely fast. From idea to actually functioning fund, less than a year. So right now, it looks for investments and start due diligence process in some of them. So there's a website online between two governments. I don't know, you just name me the country that could do that. And as Lena said, we hadn't had this close cooperation with US in I don't know, in decades probably. So there are weekly discussions to make this whole two huge bureaucracies to make it actually feasible, and we're achieving it quite fast. And it also generates a lot of the political support inside the US administration. We know it, so that's how we value that a lot. And I think it's also very it makes sense. We'd like people make money in Ukraine, and we as Ukrainian government protect that. As Ukrainian people make money in Ukraine, EU people and US people and everybody from the world. Thank you.
And just one quick follow-up on that. Is it fundamentally different to the mineral and rare earth deal that was being set up 2 years ago?
What is different?
What you are negotiating now, the breadth and scale of it.
No, so the fund is a vehicle, right? So how to float U.S. Institutional investment in. So there is a number of vehicles. One of them, European Flagship Fund, was also launched that would co-invest into some of the projects that U.S. fund is doing. So there would be a bunch of financial engineering to get this prosperity. Why? Because there should be some layer of government concession and grants to de-risk the investments, because for early investors, the risk because of Russia will still be high. So you need some financial instruments to do that, and that's exactly what we're building.
Thank you. And Alexandra, what would you say to President Trump?
A little bit context before answering this question. I don't know how historians in future will call this historical period, but the world order, which is based on UN Charter, is collapsing before our eyes. Ukraine finds itself in the epicenter of the events which will shape the world future, because it's not just a war between two states. This is a war between two systems, authoritarianism and democracy. And over past year, we become too preoccupied with transactional approach. But even if we want benefit immediately, like our future on a credit card, we have to be aware that sooner or later we will pay in credit with interest. So, over past year, we made a significant step back to the past, to the world, which is defined not by international law, but the will of strongest. And let's be honest, this world and this past wasn't great, because even the strongest are not safe in such kind of conditions. The world with nothing to rely on is fragile. And this fragile world is always a world of wars and mass violence. And that is why, if I will have a chance to meet President Trump, I will tell him that he, particularly he, has a chance to be remained in the world history as a person who stopped this fragile world.
Wow. I hope you get to the White House. We have time for one more question. There's a gentleman in the third row who's been extremely patient.
I probably don't need it. My name's Alan Cairns. I'm a former... Sorry. My name's Alan Cairns. I'm a former UK cabinet member. I had the privilege of sitting in Boris Johnson's cabinet for ill and for good. You rightly highlighted, Zaini, the financial cost, but also the social cost, where Europe really needs to stand up in order to support Ukraine in the way it really should have and needs to going forward. Now, that is a huge financial cost. But when we consider the political precariousness of so many of the political leaders across Europe, and the message that Europeans, and I include the UK in this, needs to receive, who across Europe is going to stand up to convince European nations, as well as the public in those nations, the cost and the commitments they need to make for the ongoing future, not only for the short term in securing peace, but also for the longer term in securing that long-term security we need?
Thank you. It's a very good question. Benedict, there's one for you. You laid out that this needed to happen. Who are the people that are going to make this happen?
See, I think your point about many European leaders, you know, sort of being at the brink, potentially losing their jobs to far-right candidates. I think it's those politicians at risk that have the most to gain from showing braveness. Because at least in Germany, and I'm pretty sure in France, what people want, and I'm not sure if it's the right thing to want, but they want brave politicians, they want visions. They certainly don't want the little iterative, cumbersome change that has brought many of these governments to where they currently are. And so I am betting on the embattled leaders in the weeks and months to come, because they have the most to gain from leaving that path of small, sort of, you know, iterative policies, and the most to gain from responding to a disruptive order with disruptive policies. So my money is on Macron, my money is on Keir Starmer, and my money is on Friedrich Merz. Just don't tell them.
There are lots more questions, but it's 5:30, and so I'm afraid we're going to have to bring this to an end. But I'm going to end by asking all of you not just what ought to happen, but what you think will happen. And let's say in the next year, assuming, I hope we meet under very different circumstances next year, but in the next year, one minister, let's start with you, will there be a peace agreement within the next year? And will we meet much more optimistic about the possibility of credible security guarantees and the support from Europe that is needed?
I would say yes, like me personally, I believe in it, yeah.
In the next year?
Yeah.
Ambassador Volker?
I don't believe in a peace agreement. but I believe there can be an end to fighting, and I think we can get there. And I just, if I can, Zanny, just quickly, I want to say something about the state of the war, because we spent a lot of time talking about how horrific and brutal the attacks on the energy infrastructure are and what that means for the people in Ukraine today and as they live through this. That is not the same as Putin making any strategic gains in winning this war. The front line has been static for roughly 3 years. The kill zone is roughly where it has been. Russia has a goal of recruiting 30,000 troops a month. They don't make it. Ukraine kills as many as they recruit. This is very static for Putin. After thinking he was going to win in 3 days, we're now 1,426 days into this. So this is not going in Putin's direction. So if we turn the screws on the finances, do secondary sanctions to cut off the flow of funds to the Kremlin, keep oil prices down, and make sure that there is this pipeline of support for Ukraine from the EU, weapons, ammunition, finances. I think that we will get to a point where Putin needs a ceasefire, and then we build on that.
This is a very good point. I read just a couple of days ago, I think actually, self-promotion in The Economist, that this is
Took a while.
Just this week, this is now a longer war for Russia than the Great Patriotic War, and in that war, of course, they got to Berlin.
Yeah.
This time they've gone a few miles.
Yeah.
So yeah, your point is very well taken. Alexandra, I'm going to give you the last word, so I'm going to go to Benedict now. Do you believe that all of those 4 things, those hopes that you called for in the next year, where are we going to be?
I'm not a person who can predict future. I'm a person who try to create future which we want, because the only one thing which I believe in, that future is not just unclear, future is also not pre-written. This means that we have a chance to create future which we want for us and for our own children.
Thank you.
You know, I believe very firmly that we can still win this, and that actually it's not a mystery how. We know very much how to do this. And I think as much as this world seems to be crazy land these days, I see clear pathways to Ukraine coming out as the winner at the end of it. But it is down not just to Ukrainians every day, it's also down to Europeans. So keep up the pressure on Europeans, and just hope that at some point the Americans come around again. Over.
That sounds like a very good place to end. Thank you all very much, and thank you.
Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure having you, Zeni, and all the speakers on the stage. I would like, on behalf of the organizing committee, it's our tradition to support small and medium businesses that are working in the blackouts right now in Ukraine, and to give you this warm scarf, to keep you warm in Davos. This design was inspired by the Ukrainian modern artist here in Ukraine, and we hope you like it. So please take this as a souvenir. Yes, and this one as well. Thank you. And after this, yeah, go ahead. Yes, ambassador. Yeah. And I know that you like the bracelets. I know that you wore them. So let's have a picture with the organizing committee, and then we will. While we are doing the picture, I would like to invite everyone for the networking reception that will be dedicated to the Ukrainian night in partnership with Visa and Privat today, Activate Live. So please join us at 7 p.m. today for the Ukrainian night reception. Oops, thank you.